Well, welcome back to another episode of Breakaway from the Rat Race. And today from the Greater Toronto area, we have Jas Takhar. He's a real estate investor. He's been doing that for many, many years. And he also wrote a book called Real Estate Intelligence. And he has his own podcast called Jas Takhar Podcast. And so I'm very happy to have him on the show today. Jas, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Eric. And first and foremost, before we get started, I wanted to just give you kudos and a big congratulations as a fellow content creator. I know how tough it is to book guests, do the recording, send it out, distribute it, put yourself out there, and we need, especially at this time of the recording, we need more positivity out there. And so, I mean, I'm not saying anything new to your listeners and your viewers, but I just wanted to take this time to thank you for putting yourself out there. Because as I mentioned, we need more people like you, and we need more positivity, because it's the virus that I like putting out there as well.
Oh, that's a good one. I like that. That's the virus that you like. Well, Jas, tell us a little bit about your story. I mean, as you know, as we talked about, I was born in Quebec, in Canada as well. And, I lived in Toronto probably for 10 to 15 years. That's where my kids were born. And we moved to California in 2000. So we have some sort of kinship already. So that's why, if our listeners are looking in your backdrop, you're going to see some maple leaves and some all kinds of Canadian paraphernalia.
Yeah, I mean, I born and raised here in Canada. I always say that I truly won the lottery the day that obviously I was born, because my parents decided to come to Canada about 8-9 years before I was born. So I was born in early 80s, and my parents came here kind of in the early to mid 70s. And wow, do I just love this country. So blessed to be born here, and specifically this city in Toronto. And for any of your viewers and listeners that don't know this city, it just happens to be one of the most multicultural, it's not like the most multicultural city in the world, definitely in the top 2 or top 3. I mean, if you want to get German food, you want to get Dutch food and Somalian food, like there's a little of everything in our city. And that for me was huge, because growing up in middle school and high school, all my friends were from different backgrounds. And so it gave me a taste, like literally, as you can tell.
Literally, yeah.
I like to eat, and however, but just understanding other cultures, getting myself out there, feeling comfortable in meeting people that were different, right? And so that always helped me, and I guess in a funny way, it spurred on what was already in my DNA, which was this ability as a salesman. I always had the salesmanship, right? As a 5-year-old, 6-year-old, putting up my hand really early, probably closer to say 7 or 8 years old, helping the teachers with a bake sale, book sale, knocking door to door for Christmas ornaments. Not that my family and I celebrated Christmas that deep at that time, but I just wanted to meet people. I was all about that. I always wanted to do that. And then my first paying job ever was with a newspaper route, and I was hooked. I was it was like crack to me that you get to do what you like to do, and somebody pays you. Like, it was a real mind, like I didn't understand it. I was like, wow, like all I did was knock on doors, ask for people if they want to subscribe to the Toronto Star. I mean, you obviously know one of the main newspapers here in Toronto, and I got paid for it. And so I did that for a couple of years, if not maybe for about 3 years. Then I got into a co-op program in high school, where that really was a massive change for me, because I worked in the footwear department, not the Al Bundy type of footwear, if anybody knows that reference from Married with Children. It was more.
I'm surprised you know that reference.
I do. I told you I was born in 1981. I was born in 19. It was one of the shows, Eric. It was one of the shows, and you're laughing, so you obviously know the show. It was one of the shows. It didn't allow us to watch, but we snuck down. I did. I used to sneak down at 9 o'clock on Sunday nights and watch that show.
Yeah.
But it was more for helping sprinters and marathon runners. And I emphasize that because what I learned really early is, you can be really good at sales if you understand the product. What I mean by that is that I studied and learned as much as I can. Until this day, I still know, like, if I have you run a couple of tests in front of me, I know what type of shoes you should be running in long term, for like if you're going to be running sprints or running marathons. And so I really dove into the product knowledge, which helped me later on as I went into the banking industry. And then I went into car sales. And car sales, for anybody who ever wants to get into sales, I always advise people, like, start in car sales. Why? Because there's just so many characters, meaning the mechanics, the parts manager, other salespeople, and then customers. You just meet like so many different people from different walks of life, and you have this small window with a car buyer, meaning like when they come in, you got an hour and a half to ethically, in an ethical and moral way, in a positive way, to persuade them to either go with your car or one of the competitor, or otherwise they're going to go with one of the competitors. And so I was there for 3 years. I really got at the top of my game at the age of I was 22 years old, 23 years old, and then I had this itch. That this is not what I want to do for the rest of my life. I mean, the guys that work there, I still know them till this day, and a lot of them are still there. But that's what I figured out. I was like, this is one of those places that if you're here, as I looked around, to some of the guys that were there for 25, 27 years, there's a ceiling. Like you're only going to be able to make so much. And I wanted more. I always wanted more. And then there's the one product that is a higher ticket, which is real estate, mixed in with the fact that growing up, my parents, like my father was a taxi driver his whole life. My mother was a factory worker her whole life. I saw, not that we didn't have anything, but we also didn't have everything, right? So I saw them pinch pennies, and it definitely taught me a lot. But they also rented out basement apartments. Like every property they lived in, they rented out their basement apartments. I have two older brothers. Again, we got to play all the sports as much as
they call that house hacking now.
100%. Now that's the 2020. That's the kids' term now, Eric. You and I might not be able to say those words, but yes, they call it house hacking. My parents didn't even know what they were doing. They were just renting out the basement apartment to offset the costs. I
did that. I did that with my first house.
And then I'm sure it helped you, right? Just having someone else pay your property tax and your utilities, right? But I also, and I don't really even talk about this often, but as you were mentioning what you were saying that you did, I thought about my mom. She treated those tenants like better than her kids sometimes. I mean, my mom loved us, and I say that jokingly, but I learned that at a young age, that everyone in the area would be charging, say at that time, $600 for a 1-bedroom basement apartment. My mom charged $550. She made sure that she told the tenant, you're allowed to wash your clothes, because the laundry rooms was upstairs, and the washing and the washer and dryer machine was upstairs. You can wash it anytime. Just give us a call. We'll let you come upstairs. She knew that she needed to run it as a business. Be nice to your tenants. And I tell my clients now that most landlords, the biggest mistake that they make is that they have this mindset that the tenants are beneath them, physically and like literally, figuratively speaking, right? Where my mom thought of it the other way around. No, you're above me. I'm going to take care of you. You tell me what you want. What did that do? They stayed longer. Less repairs needed to be done. They took care of the place better. They always paid on time. And so knowing all that, at the age of 23, I made the jump into real estate. And now I've been a real estate broker / real estate agent for the last 16 years. In that time frame, I grew a pretty substantial team of 47 real estate agents and 11 support staff. And I'm proud, very, very proud to say that that collectively we help a little over 700 buyers, sellers, predominantly investors every single year for the last, I'm going to say, about 6 to 7 years out of that 16 years. I'm really living the dream over here in Toronto, Canada, Eric. I mean, there's days and nights that I got to pinch myself that the team that I have around me, it's like, oh my God, like I got the best air traffic controller, I call him. He's kind of my director of real estate concierge services, Tyler. I got the best VP in the world, Laura. I got the best creative director because out of my 11 support staff, 7 of them are my media squad members that help me produce anywhere from 20 to 23 pieces of content a day, where we're just leading with education. I come from the school of thought that, look, I'm going to, Mr. and Mrs. Prospect, I'm going to give away all of the information up front. I'm not going to ask you to call me. I'm not going to ask you to DM me or message me or email me. You make the decision on when you want to do that. But at the end of the day, at least you as a prospect can say, yeah, that guy Jas, that team REC Canada did educate me so I can make an informed quality decision myself.
Yeah, and I do the same thing too. I mean, this is why I'm doing this podcast. I have another channel on YouTube as well, where I just educate people, talk about different topics related to, and my thing is about financial freedom, achieving financial freedom.
Eric, do you mind if I flip it on you for a second? 1 second?
Sure.
Because I'm very curious, because you know what happens, brother, is that I tell people what I just mentioned, other salespeople, and majority of them get it. They understand it, but they don't do it. Some of them will say, why would you do that? Now, I want you for a second to talk to the ones that get it, but don't do it. Why do you think that happens?
Why they know that this is something that's important to them, and then they decide not to do it and stuff like that?
Exactly.
Well, I think it takes a lot of effort, obviously, to do that. And you need to have, I mean, I have a team of people that work on, doing the editing, creating the thumbnail, publishing it, socializing it, and all that kind of stuff. It takes, and it's all different skills that are needed for that. I'm not good. Well, I could spend a lot of time editing material. I'm not good at doing the thumbnail and all of that. So, it would look like, it wouldn't look very good if I was to do all the different jobs. So I think it's finding the right people to actually do that work for you, that are specialized, and this is what their talent is.
Now, by you also giving away all that information on your YouTube channel and leading with education, have you found that it gives you more business because people don't really see you as someone that's trying to sell to them?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's because then they trust me, and they say, well, he knows what he's talking about. He has a lot of experience. I have done it. I'm sharing kind of my journey, and this is why I wrote my book as well, Stop Trading Your Time for Money, to basically say, hey, this is my journey. This is why I was successful in achieving financial freedom. And, I basically broke it down into the different components, and you can do it too. It's not rocket science. You don't need to have a lot of money. You just follow these things, and then you'll be able to get it. But yeah, so that's why I do it, and that really helps people. And I don't care if they go somewhere else. I want to help people to achieve financial freedom. I think we're heading into a major retirement crisis right now, and then if people don't take action, they're going to end up in very bad shape. So
I agree.
That's why I wanted to do that. And even the millennials too. I'm just not just talking about the people that are retiring soon, but even the millennials right now. They have a lot of challenges: high student debt, the inability, especially here in California, they just can't buy a house to live in. And I'm saying, forget about buying your home. Just invest that in real estate, in a real estate rental, out of state, turnkey, continue to do your job and rent your house here in California and build that passive income. Right?
I love that you said that. If you go to my Instagram profile, you're going to see me doing at least 10 to 15 videos in the last, I don't know, year and a half,
Yeah.
just on that topic.
Yeah.
I mean, there's thousands of videos that I've done, but just on that topic, that your principal residence is not an asset, and there is nothing wrong with renting where you live, as long as, in my opinion, you take the rest of your savings, the rest of your capital, and go invest into an income property.
Exactly. I actually sold my house. I had a house in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, and I sold it to invest, to double down on real estate, to double down on my company, bought a couple of apartment buildings. The cost of owning my home was the same as the cost of renting a bigger house with a view that was all renovated. It was beautiful. The house that I rented was much better than the house that I sold. And it was the same cost of ownership, the same cost of living in both of these things.
Yeah,
and
but
this allowed. Yeah.
Sorry, no, I was going to say, but I go ahead.
And this allowed me to take the equity on my home, invest it in apartment buildings, and the revenue, the cash flow from that paid for all my living expenses. So you have to decide what your dream is. Is your dream to own your home, or is your dream to own your time? I think that's what's important. And I'd rather own my time than own my home.
And that's why I hope, as long as your viewers and listeners caught that you didn't sell your home, go to Vegas and spend it, or buy silly stuff with it. What you did, take that money and you invested it into income properties. Also, even if you took some of that money, look, I always say that obviously as a real estate broker, I'm quite biased in that sense. So I'm not going to hide that fact. I think you should invest it all into real estate, but there is one better investment than real estate. And I believe that's in the investment in yourself. Right. Yeah. And so like, i.e., if you even took some of that and invested into your business, to me, that's investing into yourself. But the main part there that I caught anyways was the fact that you took that money and invested it into an income property.
Yeah, that's right. Because there's some people that I know that they've seen that I've sold my home, and then so now they did the same thing, but then they failed on the second part. They haven't invested the money that they made from that into a passive income vehicle. So they're just now living off the equity. And I just like, okay, so you have enough money for 5-10 years, then what? Like, what are you doing? So anyway, so that's kind of my thing there. So Jas, so you're so from what I gather, so the 700 or more buyers that you helped and stuff like that, you mentioned they were investors. So were they all investors at the REC Canada, or some of them were just like regular retail buyers?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Out of the 47 agents that I have, we've kind of made divisions and departments in our company here at REC Canada, where we help first-time home buyers. We help what we call smart sizers, meaning that somebody who's moving up into maybe a bigger home, or somebody who's moving into a smaller home, depending on their situation. And then we help people just sell their home, right? So out of the 700, I'm going to say 400 to 450 are investors.
Oh, wow. That's significant.
Yeah.
And this is something that I found, is that so many real estate agent and real estate broker, they don't focus on investors. They focus, I mean, when I went into the Memphis market and Cleveland market, I mean, my older son was doing all the calls, because I was still full-time as an independent consultant. And so he did all the calls. He called like 200 real estate agents and said, hey, I'm an investor. I want to buy multiple properties and stuff like that in your area. Can you help me out? And out of like 200, there's like 2 or 3 that responded within like 24 hours. You're coming to them with business, and they're just like, I don't want to deal with investors. I don't want to. We're buying 10 houses a month in the market. It's just like, you don't want that business.
Exactly. And that's when we made the switch about, I'm going to say 10 years ago, out of the 16 years. Yeah, that makes sense. About 10 years ago, we said we're going to start to focus on investment, real estate, helping people create wealth in real estate long term. So we don't talk about, not that there's anything wrong with, like, I don't knock anyone else's business model, each to their own. But what we do is the boring stuff. Like I tell people right away, it's watching paint dry, it's watching grass grow, it's long term, it's buy, hold, refinance, and then repeat. We don't even do the full, as the kids call it, BRRRR strategy, which is the refinancing. I apologize, which is the renovation aspect. We kind of stick to just the buying and holding and refinancing. But what we found is that there was just so much white space. Like there was nobody really doing it.
No, nobody's doing that.
Nobody's really focusing anyways on it, right? And so you're bang on, Eric, when you mentioned that investors are multi-transactional in the same year, some of them in the same month. It's like, whoa, this is a no-brainer. And what also happened for anybody who's in real estate, who's a real estate agent right across the world, I mean, I can tell you that when you work with investors, yes, they're multi-transactional. A, B, there's no really emotion involved in what they're doing. Exactly. Now, that might be a good thing or a bad thing. Like I also would just, at the start of my career, I only worked with first-time home buyers. So I liked the emotion. Like I liked it. I liked when a husband and wife or two partners were walking into a house and saying, oh my God, I love this house. Like I like that kind of, that touchy-feely stuff, right? But here's the other thing with investors is that you'll also pick up on the peripheral business, meaning you're sitting down with Eric, but then Eric also mentions after you're done talking to him about his investment portfolio that his cousin needs to sell her house. And that his niece needs to buy her first condo. So you pick up that peripheral business as well. I personally believe that investors in the real estate business are top of the funnel because they also own homes as well where they live. They have friends and investors know more investors. And so, look, the pie's big enough. It's why I give away all the information for free anyways, that we can all eat. But if you're a real estate agent listening right now and you're not working with investors, it's something that I definitely advise you to do. Just shoot me a DM or something on Instagram and I'll give away whatever I can.
Yeah, that's right. Because I think you do need, as a real estate agent, I think you would need a little bit more knowledge and stuff like that. And you have to be a little bit, maybe more business savvy in order to do that. But it's not, you can do it. And I think it's a big potential, I think, for real estate agent. And I think you've shown it with your company, REC. And half of your clients more than half of your clients are investors.
Yeah, look,
so
you got to
that's phenomenal.
You got to pick up the terms, right? You got to know, what is ROI, what's cash on cash, what's cap rate, why should an investor invest in this property over another property? It's different when they're going to live in there because they're looking at just, usually most of the time, families and buyers and first-time home buyers are looking at the schools in the area and stuff like that. When you're investing this, you got to go a little bit deeper, but it's like anything else. I mean, we didn't grow up knowing how to drive a car. But we all figured it out. We started at 10 and 2, checking the mirrors, put the belts on, and then afterwards, over time, you do all that, plus you're on the phone, eat, shave, put your makeup on, and you do it with just your knee. You know what I mean? So over time, it's just like anything else. You get to learn it.
Yeah. So what are some of so that's that skill, but it's also, you have to know your market too. And I think you kind of hinted on that. And you have to understand, I mean, for us, it's that when we're talking to the realtor, we're looking for rental properties. So we're buying distressed properties. And so we have to know everything. We have to know the realtor has to walk the property and say, okay, this is the renovation, like a ballpark estimate for the renovation. Is it going to be $5,000, $10,000, or $25,000? Or should we walk away? And then also knowing what the rent should be, what the after repair value is going to be, what for the refinancing and stuff like that, and then backtrack it into how much we can buy it for. And so that's kind of where I think that's what the work that the real estate agent needs to be able to do. And I think this is where I think they're not willing to do that. It's just kind of like, if they do like just the regular retail sales, they end up and say, oh, well, this is the price of the house because this house is sold for the same amount
Oh,
few months
100%.
ago. So it's a little bit easier, but you don't have the repeat buyers though.
Oh yeah, I mean, the amount of investors that there's let me rephrase this. There are very few investors in my network that have only done one deal with me.
Yeah,
It just doesn't happen because it is the most addictive drug on the planet, which is real estate investing, in my opinion. It becomes so addictive because once you get it, once you understand it, and especially after you refinance a property, it's like, whoa, this is real. I just got dropped with $300,000 and tax-free money. Like how many, like, you know that feeling, Eric? Like how many times you refinance a property, you're like, whoa, somebody else paid that down for me, and the values went up, and it really, all I had to do is manage some tenants, and I got all this tax-free money.
I don't even manage tenants.
Well, I'm just saying, and 100%, right? Like, I'll obviously at the scale you do this at now, you wouldn't manage tenants, but at the start, I mean, some people wouldn't, and that is by far, in my opinion, again, the best type of drug.
Yeah, but I think even at the beginning, I mean, we talk about property management. I didn't see the value of property management at the very beginning. I bought my first apartment building when I was 18 years old in, you probably know that city, Trois-Rivières. So between Montreal and Quebec. And then, so that's where I bought my first 8-unit apartment building. And because I had a mentor that told me, that helped me basically figure out what to do. The realtor that I was working with kept telling me, no, what you're looking for, it doesn't exist. It's impossible, blah, blah, blah. And eventually he gave me like the 4 binders of MLS listing and said, just you go at it if you don't believe me. So I went through the 4 binders, and then and I found like 2 or 3 properties that worked. I also had no money, so I had to find a buyer that was willing to give me a note on so basically a vendor take back or a seller note in second position. And so that's what I was able to do. No money down, and so bought that property, and it was cash flowing at the end of the day.
Oh my God! Wow. So I mean, a little different time now.
But I wish that's one mistake that I made, and this is why I was bringing this story. Is that the one mistake that I make is that I didn't have property management in place, and that would really have helped me tremendously to focus on kind of like the next step and kind of work on something else.
Well, yeah, right, because that's not your expertise. I talk about staying in your lane a lot. I mean, there's shelves behind me right now, but I had my VP Laura put all these up. Like you don't want a hammer in Jas's hands. Everybody knows that around me, right? That's not a good things are not going to happen. But what I would advise people is that if you enjoy property management and that's something
that's true,
then do it. That's going to make you happy and do it. Right? But what in your situation, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but it seemed like you actually enjoyed finding those diamonds in a rough. Like you got 4 binders of MLS listings, you found 3-4 properties that work. That's an expertise. That's a skill set, and if you just focused on that part and then go find some more notes and seller take properties where you're going to get seller take back and vendor take back mortgages, and let somebody else worry about the management. I myself, for 60-70% of my properties, I still manage them because mine are down to, I'm in the business. So it's easier for me. But when something needs to be fixed, i.e., a burner on a stove or a light fixture, I'm not going to touch that. I'm going to use the good old friends Google and find who I need to find and get that person out there to fix it.
Yeah. So let's talk about your podcast as well. So you have the Jas Takhar Podcast, and where you talk to other real estate investors, entrepreneurs, and leaders. And so tell me a little bit more about the podcast. Any kind of like interesting stuff going on in there?
Yeah, so 3 years ago, we used to have a national syndicated. 5 years ago, I apologize, we had a national syndicated radio show here on AM 640. Like you'll know,
Oh, wow.
those stations right across the country, and it started to get really expensive. In fact, it ended up costing us about $200,000 to $250,000 a year to have a show once a week, and
Wow.
you were put in a box, right? Like I mean, if I remember properly, I think it was done in like 12-minute segments. There's only so much you can say. If you know, by mistake you threw an F-bomb or something, I mean, that's big trouble.
Yeah.
And so, however, we learned the power of media that definitely got our foot in the door with some high profile developers here in the city, because they knew that we had a radio show, right? I mean, I
Yeah.
mentioned I have a radio
Yeah.
show
Yeah.
to you, that I had one. You even said, oh, wow. So
Oh,
we used
yeah.
to
Yeah.
get, right? We used to get that a lot. But as I mentioned, it got expensive to distribute. And then 3 years ago, I heard a word called podcast. I was like, what the heck is this thing? Like, I don't know what this is. So I started to Google it, and I was like, oh, okay, this is kind of cool. You get to speak into a mic. Something I've been doing for 26 years in the sales and service industry is being on the phone. I mean,
Yeah.
I've never been told that I have an ugly voice. I've never been told I have the most sexy, sultry voice either. But I was like, okay, I'm kind of maybe in the middle somewhere. And, you know, being of East Indian descent, Eric, my mom negotiates over an apple back home, and so I said, I found out that it was free. I was like, this is really good now. Like, I love this. I can talk to the world, and it's for free. It's my show. I can talk about whatever I'd like. This is a no-brainer for me. So I started
Yeah.
talking about, for 17 episodes straight, I spoke about the importance of certain aspects of a real estate purchase, a sale, or an investment. For example, the importance of sitting down with a mortgage advisor, a home inspector, a lawyer. And about episode 16, 17, I kind of got bored of it. And so I sat down with my co-host at that time, who's also the VP, and now she has her own podcast and her own show. But I was like, I don't know if I can do this forever. Like, yeah, I might be able to do another 50 of these, but I'm not getting to really speak about other passions. There's more to jazz than just real estate. And as we started to throw stuff on the wall, it became quite apparent that I love talking to entrepreneurs and also documenting my journey. I also am very self-taught, i.e., I don't have a formal education. I barely passed high school, but one thing that I did do a lot of and do till this day is put on audiobooks, go to workshops, go to seminars. I'm a junkie, for a lack of a better word,
Yeah.
in that sense. The Anthony Robbins, the Jack Canfields of the world. And so I also wanted to speak to those guys and gals, and I wanted to allow listeners and viewers to kind of be a fly on the wall, like they are right now with the conversation that you and I are having. And then over time, I started to speak about entrepreneurship, tips and strategies for leaders, as well as for anybody who's thinking about wanting more information on buying, selling, and investing. I'm proud to say every single week for the last 3 years, once a week on Wednesdays, I come out with an episode. I'm at 161 episodes as of today. And so I've been very, obviously very consistent with it. But it has by far been the most exhilarating and fulfilling project I've ever taken on in my life, because, like, check this out. I'm speaking to Eric and Callie right now. Like,
Yeah.
my life has taken me all over. This
That's
journey has taken me all over the world.
Yeah.
And in that same time, I got to also sit down with some amazing entrepreneurs, guys and gals that own multi-billion-dollar companies. I've sat down and learned from and spent a lot of time with Gary Vee, for example, who was a massive, he was a massive reason why I got started with this. I spent a full day with him and his team.
Because he was a big thing. He had a big number of podcasts and stuff like that about specific to real estate agents, about getting them on social media, getting
So
them on Facebook and
so
stuff like
so
that. So
so what happened is that I heard that around like
yeah,
in like those messages, and I just followed up, took a year
yeah.
and a half to get him on the podcast. I flew to New York, went to his office, taped everything, and then him and his team was very, very nice.
Mm-hmm.
Let me stay, excuse me, in their office for the full day, myself, my business partner, my VP, and my videographer. And they told me everything that they do, how they do it, why they do it, as much
Oh,
as they
really?
could in a day. Yeah. So, and then I recorded a really cool podcast with the guy. And then I've sat down with
Okay.
the Grant Cardones of the world. I've sat
Yeah.
down with Patrick Bet David,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Tracy Tudor, who's a big $1 million listing real estate agent in LA.
Yeah.
Josh Altman, that's in your world as well over there in LA. And just some like really, really cool people. But I got to tell you, 161 episodes, some massive names, but yet till this day, my most listened to episodes are with just regular Mary Janes and Joes.
Mm-hmm.
Why? And it's funny because it took me a little while to get it and understand it. My listeners, my viewers, and yours are probably very similar. They can't relate to a Grant Cardone or a
Exactly.
Gary Vee.
Exactly.
These guys own $300-400 million companies, but they can relate to Sue Murphy,
Yeah.
who went from 0 to 11 properties in
Yeah.
2 years. They can relate to her. She's 62
Yeah.
years old.
Exactly.
Like, you know what I mean? They can relate to an Anthony Tabar, who's
Mm-hmm.
a real estate agent and had to sell muffins when he got started as a part-time gig just to keep himself going in the business. They can
Yeah.
relate to a Saher who was an international student. English wasn't her first language, and now she's one of the top real estate agents right across the city of Toronto. Right,
Mm-hmm.
and so that was interesting for me to go through as
Yeah.
well. But podcasting, it's funny sometimes. I have to pinch myself again and say, "Wow, I am a podcaster. Like I've done 161 episodes.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
wow, that's something to be really, really proud of." And I look over to my media squad, and I'm so proud of them because they stuck through the vision, even
Mm-hmm.
when none of it made sense. Like it just didn't
Yeah.
even make sense. What are we doing? And so, yeah, that's my journey for the podcast, and I appreciate you taking me down that path. It's not something that I've been speaking about recently because nobody's asked.
Yeah, no, and that's true. I think it makes sense. A lot of people, yeah, you kind of listen to Warren Buffett and stuff like that if you're a stock market investor, and then you just kind of look at that and say, oh yeah, this is great, but how do I be a Warren Buffett? Like how do I become like a Grant Cardone if I'm working full time and I'm doing this and this? How can I be, a lot of these other individuals? And yeah, people don't relate to that. But yeah, if you talk to, and that's why I like to talk about to just normal investors, people that have done, they've done amazing things. They've done and it's clear to their mind as well that when they went from 0 to 4 properties, that it's clear in their mind what obstacle they had to go over or break through in order to get to where they are, as opposed to Grant Cardone is just, oh yeah, well, I don't want to say anything about Grant, but he has a different approach. He's trying to help people as well, and I respect him, but you can't really relate to him and in that same way. So about these investors, these regular investors. So what are some of the roadblocks that you saw, like maybe 2 or 3 major roadblocks that you saw why people they had to break through in order to get there, that some of the listeners would be listening to this podcast and say, well, I'm stuck, like I bought this one property and then I'm kind of like, I want to buy another one, but I can't find my second property, or I don't have the whatever.
Yeah, I think it's a couple of things that come to my mind when you say that. Number one is getting stuck in paralysis by analysis, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where a lot of investors will or wannabe investors say that, okay, let me go back and run the numbers and make sure that this is something that I actually want to do. But in that time frame and in that time period, and I'm sure this has happened to you in earlier on in your career, Eric, and it definitely happened to me personally. So I understand it, right?
Yeah.
Which is, well, let me go run the numbers, and then by the time they run the numbers, the deal is gone. What I've come to realize that the best strategy is tie up the property as fast as you possibly
exactly.
can, because in real estate, it's normal to have contingencies. It's normal to have a time period where you can do that due diligence. So I'm not here to tell anybody go crazy and go nuts and just buy properties firm without any type of conditions, sight unseen. I'm not saying that. I'm saying tie up the property and then do your due diligence.
Yeah, exactly.
You want your lawyer to see it, great. You want your husband's sister's cousin to see it, great. Make it conditional upon that. If the seller agrees, is a different story, but at least you can make it conditional upon the solicitor's and or the lawyer's approval. And so that is by far the number one mistake I see people make. And I think if that's one, then 1A would be being distracted by the shiny object syndrome. Meaning that I want to invest into, they call, I'll get on a call with people and say, Jas, I want to invest into multiplexes, new builds, commercial plazas, as well as retail offices. And I'll do that in a 100-kilometer radius. Hard to help you. You're all over the map here.
Exactly.
Financing is different. And so what I would advise people is educate yourself on all the strategies. Okay. It's almost like a buffet. Like you go into a buffet line, try a little bit of everything, meaning educate yourself on everything, and then decide quickly on which strategy makes sense for you. Because for me, for example, I know all the strategies. I've educated myself on the strategies. I help my clients with all the strategies. But personally, I like one strategy, and that is investing into new build condos. It's different. It doesn't give you the high cash flow that people are looking for necessarily. It doesn't give you the ability to do some renos and flip it. It's not that. It's boring. It's 10, 15 years out, right? And so 20 years out sometimes. And so that's what I like. But to Eric, that might not make sense. There's nothing wrong with that. He's not right. He's not wrong. I'm not right. I'm not wrong. However, the second that I've decided that that's going to be one of my strategies, when someone brings me, my business partner that we do a lot of investments together, he brought me a cottage deal 3 weeks ago. Okay. And it's a good deal. I mean, I think it's a good deal. He's going to invest into it, but I told him no. And he's like, you sure, buddy? Like, let's do this together. I said, no, I don't want it. I'm not in the cottage investment business, or that's not my strategy that I actually want to do. And so as I reminded him and I said that, it kind of made sense. Also, what it's done is when I buy some of these new builds, it gives me the ability to do what's called an assignment. I can flip the paper before it gets built for a massive profit. Like on average, I buy something today, it's going to be built in 3 years. The price has gone up by about $130,000, $150,000. Call it 150 just for easy math. I can flip it and make a profit of 120,000. You got to leave some money on the table for the new investor. But when I get that offer, I'm reminded of my strategy. My strategy is buy and hold. So then I don't get wishy-washy, right? And so I don't flip it. Why? Because I want to hold on to it and pull out the equity at a later date. And so that is probably the 1A that I hear the most from people, which is or I see and I notice from people, which is just not having a clear path on what they actually want to do in terms of the investment strategy. And then the one that has been going on for 100 years from investors or wannabe investors again is that I don't have the money. And I just think that they're allowing a made up obstacle to stop them, because not having enough money is not a good enough reason. Because if you need $150,000 down as a down payment and you have zero, that doesn't mean that you can't invest. You just got to find people that you can invest with. And I mean,
Yeah.
if you missed what Eric said at the earlier part of this podcast, just go back and rewind, because he spoke about doing it with no money down. And can you
Exactly.
always do it with no money down? No. If you're bringing $50,000 to the table, well, now you only need another $100,000. That's two people with $50,000,
Mhm.
right? That's 10 people. That's 10 people with $10,000,
Yeah.
right? That's one person with 100. Like, there's a lot of ways to skin the cat, right? And
Yeah.
so allowing yourself to be stopped because you don't have money is just not a good enough reason.
Yeah, exactly. And so I totally agree. Tying up the property, I think this is important. I mean, as soon as you find the property that you are interested in, and then you want to run the numbers and stuff like that. Well, tie the property up front, put a earnest money deposit, and then you do your due diligence. You look at that. There's other unknown in there that you haven't even looked at, and then decide what you want to do with the property. And I think that's also an easier way for people to get used to the motion, get used to the transaction. So you do your purchase and sales agreement, you put your EMD, and then you back out, you get your money back. I said, okay, that's not bad. I said, I learned something here. And then next one, and then this one, you do your due diligence and say, yeah, I want to close on that one. And then that's when. And I still remember the first couple of properties that I bought, and it was not even a lot of money, but I was like, okay, I said, okay, well, this is something very, I'm going to sign this up. I'm going to tie the property up and blah blah blah, and then I'm going to lose like $1,000 if that doesn't work out. And that's it's only $1,000. I've paid more than that in some education things, so. But that's kind of how it was going. And then I also did like a commercial deal where it was like a $5 million property. Actually, no, I think we put the purchase, a letter of intent for, I think it was $12 million. That's right. And then $12 million. And then we had to put like significant amount of down payment and all of that. But I had already done a lot of little transactions. So that was just kind of like once it was the same thing, but just with a little bit more money as EMD. And, but I tied up the property for, a year for me to do the due diligence and all of that. And then we eventually backed out of the deal. And I got my money back. But that's the kind of thing that people need to realize, especially when you go into the bigger deal. You need more time for due diligence. And so it's very important for you to tie the deal. About the shiny object too, that's what happened. People run the number, they go back, run the numbers and say, oh yeah, but there's also this other strategy and all of that. They want to pick the one that has the best number. And for me, what I recommend people to do is, as you said, kind of like learn a little bit about all the different strategies. And that's what I talk about in my book as well. And I created the Strategy Quadrant, which basically tells you what the risk and the effort needed to get some of these strategies off the ground and working for you. And so if you're working full time, you don't have that much time to invest in some kind of real estate investment that requires a lot of your effort, a lot of time, hand management, and all of that. So they're out for you. So you have to don't even think about doing these strategies until you're financially free.
I agree.
And then if you don't have a lot of money, that also kind of narrows it down. Also, where you can't go into these big buildings that require a lot of money, or these strategies that require a lot of like even a BRRRR strategy, if you have to put like hundreds of thousands of dollars to renovate a property and buy it and before you refinance it. So these are the kind of things that I recommend. Is really to look at your resources and look at your goals, and all these things need to be in alignment. So you have to have, if your goal is to achieve financial freedom and generate passive income, these are the strategies, one of the strategies that I want to use. But these are the resources that I have, and then all of that need to be tied up in order to for it to be effective and to actually help you get to your goal. And then the money, exactly. People are always just be creative about the money. This is something that we've learned in real estate investing, is that there's so many ways to bring money to the table. Just figure it out. Talk to people that have money. always be raising money. You know, there's always is that ABC always be closing.
Yeah.
There should be always ABRM always be raising money.
For sure.
There's one investor that I quote all the time. I don't forget his name, but he used to say that it doesn't matter how much money you have, you're always short a couple of millions. And
I like that. I like
he
that.
was because he was doing these. He had a lot of money. He was doing these massive projects, like $50 million, $100 million project, $200 million project, but he was always raising money. Like he had money, obviously, but he was that's what he was saying, is that you're always short, so always be raising money.
100%.
So, well, Jas, it was a pleasure talking to you. Anything else you want to mention before we wrap it up?
First, again, I just want to thank you for having me. I hope I brought some value to the conversation today.
Thank you.
And if people kind of want to dive a little bit more into my world, really the best place, the one-stop shop, is to go to my site, jastakhar.ca. Flirt around there. It's jastakhar.ca. Flirt around, see what you might like. Everything. I got nothing to sell anyone unless you're thinking about investing into Toronto real estate. There's not much. My cup is overflowing now, and it's my time to give back. And that's kind of the stage in my life where I'm at right now.
Yeah, and I think obviously we're gonna have is your Jas Takhar podcast, is there a link in there on your website as well?
You can search Jas Takhar Podcast on any platform, all podcast platforms, as well as on YouTube as well. You'll see the good-looking Indian guy's picture on it.
Okay, and you have a YouTube live show also on Wednesdays called Ask Jas?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, it happens every Wednesday at noon.
At noon?
At
noon Toronto time.
Noon Eastern. I was just about to say noon Eastern. So you guys are just getting up at that. Oh, well, you're getting to work at that time anyways. And so it's a platform that I do every Wednesday for about 30, 40 minutes, where I just take live questions about real estate, investing, as well as if you're an entrepreneur or a business owner. I've been lucky enough to be mentored by some amazing people, but I've also been through a lot myself that I just want to share with people now.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you, Jas. It was a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you for sharing your experience with our listener.
Thank you for listening to Break Away from the Rat Race with your host, Eric Martel. If you want to share your story and experience with our listeners, please message us on Facebook at Break Away from the Rat Race. Also, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and our podcast on iTunes.